I just wanted to point out a few things before you even start this project, a project like this. So if you have something that's been taken apart and you're piecing it together, on something like this, before you ever start an engine like this, make sure that it is in park or neutral, you know, and also double check and make sure that the throttle is actually closing when it's relaxed or whatever. Make sure your throttle spring is on there and it's holding the throttle closed, and make sure the throttle adjustment screw isn't holding the throttle open or anything like that, because that could potentially be dangerous if you have the motor rev up and it's in gear or something. That could be pretty bad. So make sure it's in park. Put the parking brake on. Do whatever it takes to make sure that you're safe and the vehicle is not going to take off. On a manifold like this, I do believe that was a factory PCV valve. And something I wanted to point out is that whenever you buy your gasket, one of these gaskets, and it doesn't have this hole, then you'll block that off, because it literally is routed right up through the mounting surface, right into the bottom of the carburetor. It gets air from right in here. And if you have that hooked up to your PCV and you block it off, it's not going to be working. I don't know what years or whatever, but if your manifold has that hole, your gasket needs to have the hole. Some of these gaskets don't. I think that might be the later model 2-barrel, I'm not sure. I learned that by installing the wrong gasket and having oil seep out of every surface on the engine, out of the valve covers, oil pan, everything. It was blowing oil out everywhere. And it was all because I had blocked that off. It's always good to check stuff like this too. You want to have plenty of thread engagement. I'm putting mine on with about ½ an inch. Right now would be a good time to put the hook up the PVC, just like this. The one thing I wanted to point out too is that on these you're not really required to run an inline filter. The filter is right here. But I do admit these filters are really small, and if you have any, like a dirty tank that has rust in it or something, they do stop up pretty quick. Whatever. I mean, I'm going to go ahead and run it for now. Oh yeah, I forgot to snug up the carburetor mounting bolts. And here's the most confusing part for everyone: how to hook up the vacuum advance. On GMs, the vacuum advance uses what they call a time port. I'm assuming it's this one that's right here because it doesn't have nothing on it. And I'm pretty sure that's where it was hooked. But one way to verify that is what the time port means is that if the engine's idling, it's not pulling a vacuum. It pulls a vacuum whenever you open the throttle. I'm not really sure how it does that, but this port, this hose is not routed into the manifold. I believe it's routed like on the top side of the butterflies, so somehow that's what it does. Whenever you open the throttle, it pulls more vacuum. It pulls a vacuum through this port. And that is the correct one to use. Now for your fuel line, this is what the stock fuel lines look like. Steel lines. 90% of the time the fittings are chewed up from vice grips, but I think it's a lot better to use one of these. That way it's not flopping around. So just screw it into the fuel pump and wrestle it into this part. make sure it's aimed perfectly straight, or you could strip one of these. Alright, and tighten the other side. Okay, since this truck has a Turbo 400, it doesn't have a kickdown cable. It has a vacuum line that hooks up to some kind of modulator. And this transmission that was bolted on this was a Turbo 350. It doesn't have that. So I noticed they have a little line like this plugged off. That's where I'm going to hook up my line to my transmission. That needs to be hooked up or it won't shift. Can't really do much with the throttle cable because I don't have the bracket. But if you had a kickdown cable, it would go right here and hook up to the bottom. Whenever you press the gas, it pulls it. Make sure you don't have any vacuum leaks. Anything you see with holes, just put a cap on it or something. And on the idle adjustment, of course you adjust it after it's running or whatever. But you're supposed to run these in all the way. The carburetor's probably already adjusted for the engine, so I probably just messed up by doing that. But anyway, you turn the idle adjustment screws all the way in, and then a factory preset, they're supposed to go 1.5 turns out. So there goes 1/2, 1, 1.5. So that's half, 1, and 1.5. Okay, one of the most important things is to make sure you have the throttle return spring on there. And from the factory, they always use these double springs. I'm pretty sure that's for a safety reason. It's just a little spring inside a bigger spring. It'd probably be a good idea to put, a new one on there. I'm going to use this one for now, but it'll probably be replaced pretty soon. So, can't really see it, but there's a spot right here for the spring to go into. So just make sure both springs are in that hole. I actually took off that bracket that's supposed to hold the kickdown cable because I don't need it. But this bracket right here has a little tab right here that has a hole in it for these two springs to go into. So that is very important to have that on there. Make sure this is the throttle, like the speed adjustment. It basically just opens and closes the throttle a little bit to adjust the idle speed. Make sure this is closed and make sure this isn't holding the butterflies open too far. And the choke, that's going to have to be on a part 2 series or something, or on a part 2 video, because I can't get into that right now. Right there on the back of the carburetor, this fitting right here, that's what you would hook up to your power brakes. But this truck doesn't have power brakes. The Monte Carlo did, so that's going to have to be capped off. At this point, the only thing left to do is to hook up your throttle cable and to put an air filter on it, and that's about it.